Hello everyone, welcome to NetSlow Productions. I'm Oliver, and in this tutorial, we are going to be showing you how to add a glow to your lightsabers using the Saber plugin from Video Copilot in After Effects. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, so first off, before we start adding the glow to the lightsabers, you're going to want to go to videocopilot.net and download the free Saber plugin. It is for Mac and for Windows, so pretty much everyone should be able to use it, and there shouldn't be too much incompatibility there. So once you've done that, you're going to want to follow the instructions and put it into your After Effects plugins folder, and then it will appear in your effects and presets menu at the bottom here. I've got a lot of different ones from Video Copilot already, but it should appear as Saber here. So we're just going to simply drag and drop it onto the selected layer that we want, our white solid here, and you'll see everything pretty much goes dark. I'll turn off this red lightsaber here, and you'll see we have this bright column of lightsaber in the middle here. And we're going to apply that to the mask right now. We'll go over to Customize Core, and we'll select the core type. You can either choose Saber, Layer Masks, or Text Layer. So for what we're wanting to do, we want it Layer Masks. And you'll see that it applies to the mask, but you'll also see that it's not filling in the inside. So what we need to do is go down to Render Settings, and we'll set the composite setting to Add. And then you'll see, hey, it's on top of it now, and it's filled in with white. But you'll also see that it's not really adding any light to the scene around it. So what we're going to do is go down to the transfer mode and set that to add. And now you'll see it's super duper bright. But if you want, you can also set it to screen for a more subdued effect. So it's not adding on top of it, it's just screening the glow on top of it. But for right now, we're going to set it to add. Alright, and then we're going to go over here to alpha mode and set this to mask core, because right now the core is a bit too big, and you'll see now the core is cut off at the mask, but the glow is not. And there's other modes for this alpha here, like enable mask, that'll just cut it off for the entire mask. There's also mask glow, which will just mask the glow around the mask and not the core. So you see the core is kind of peeking out here. But we're going to set this to mask core. And this will enable the other masks that we put on here to properly subtract from this mask. Like when it goes behind a person, it'll actually be able to mask the core, just not the glow, so it'll look a lot better. Alright, now there's a few more settings that we will go over here. The first one is the flicker. So obviously, with lightsabers, there is going to be some flicker. And you can change the different intensities and speeds of the flicker here. You'll see the intensity can go all the way up to 500%. But we'll just keep this at maybe around 20%. And then flicker speed, it's really up to you. It's just how much flicker you want on your lightsaber or how fast it's going. Like you could have like a lot of flicker and it would look kind of like a Kylo Ren lightsaber, I would imagine. There's also mask randomization, which will randomize where the flicker is. So it could look more like a Kylo Ren lightsaber, as the flicker would be different intensities in different places. But we'll just turn that off for now. And we'll see how the flicker looks in a second. But alright, now let's go over some of the settings to make the glow look good. So we have the glow intensity, which controls the intensity of the glow, pretty straightforward. We'll just keep that at 50 for now. We have the core size, which will change the size of the core. You'll see if we make it too big, it'll basically disappear because the core is too large for itself, I'm guessing. But I believe that was at 3, so we'll keep it at 3 for now. There's also glow spread, which will change the spread of the glow, but as you see, the more you spread it, the less intense it gets around the lightsaber. So we'll keep that at 0.5 as well. And then there's the glow bias, which will basically change the intensity of just the glow. So we can keep fooling around with these settings to see what looks good. So I'm going to go in here. I think glow intensity should be a little higher. Looks a bit blown out, but we'll change this to 0.4, this around 0.6, and then maybe this to, not 0.2, maybe like 2. Kind of like that. Okay. And you can always tweak these settings later. One more thing we are going to do is we're going to turn this motion blur off for the Saber layer. I haven't played around too much with this motion blur setting. I don't know if it works with masks, because there's a way that the Saber plugin works where you don't have to have masks. That's what just this Saber is for. But we're going to be adding our own motion blur using CC Force Motion Blur later. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of blurring around the edges. As you can see here, it's a really harsh edge. You can see pretty much exactly where the masks are, and that's not going to look good when we render it out. So I have a plugin from Video Copilot that lets me pull up effects here that you can also get from Video Copilot. That is free. But we'll just go over here and we'll type in fast box blur, and we'll drag that over to our layer. Maybe just close this real quick. And then we just want a very small amount of blur. And then I like to turn up the iterations to a pretty high amount. Or maybe we can kind of reverse this, maybe make it 10 and then 0.2. And as you can see, that basically fixes the harsh edges, makes it a little bit bigger, more soft. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add CC Force Motion Blur. So we can go in here, type CC Force Motion Blur, and we'll drag that over. And as you can see, there is now some motion blur on our lightsaber. It calculates it from the previous and forward frame of the mask to give it motion blur to where it's going. So we're going to turn the shutter angle down so it's not too blurred. I'm gonna maybe set it to 80. If it's too blurred, you'll actually be able to see stuff like the red of your lightsaber blade here, and it'll look really stretched. So we'll just turn this to 8. And then there's the motion blur samples. We don't want to crank this too high because it will increase render time significantly and it'll just slow down the whole process. But I like to set around 10 to sometimes 15. When the lightsaber is moving really fast, it can get really big. Let's see if we can't find a frame where that happens. We can see the mask there. Let's try that. Yeah, as you can see here, if the motion blur samples are too low, let's just set this to like a few, like 4. You can see that it has hard edges on it. We can fix this somewhat, I believe, by putting, no, the fast box blur doesn't do anything to alleviate those hard edges. So we need to turn the motion blur samples up until that pretty much disappears. And we want as little as possible without having that. Maybe we'll turn this down to like 50. Because I believe that actually might have been the shutter angle of the camera we were using. But if we go frame by frame here, you can see in some parts the masking actually doesn't work, and this is because of the CC Force Motion Blur. So when that happens, what we need to do is we'll turn this on. We will go down here to the blue lightsaber layer, go to effects, and we'll go over to the CC Force Motion Blur, and we will click on the stopwatch for the shutter angle and set a keyframe there. We'll go forward 1 frame, and we'll just turn this all the way off, and as you can see, the effect is mitigated now without looking too off. Maybe we could turn it up, even if we turn it up like a small amount, as you can see, it'll just go over the entire thing, which is not what we want. So we'll just turn this down to 0, go forward another frame, and we'll put this back up to something like 50. That's okay. And as you can see, it doesn't look too bad now. Oh, this mask probably needs to be fixed. After you add the CC force motion blur, you might have to go through and fix some of the masking, or you could probably turn down the CC force motion blur at different points if you wanted to. Also, as the lightsaber gets closer and farther away, you'll see it's pretty close and pretty big here, and it's not really bright enough. You might have to change either the intensity of the lightsaber or some other parameters of the lightsaber to make it seem like it's closer, and then when it gets farther away, as you can see, it gets pretty big, so you might have to either turn down the intensity, maybe turn that even down like 20. That's pretty low. Yeah, can't really see the glow now. But either turn that down or turn the core size down. You don't want to get rid of the glow at far distances, but you do want to make it seem like the glow is smaller. So maybe we could turn on the glow spread or the glow bias. But now let's just go over the red lightsaber really quick. We'll just do this really fast since we kind of know how to do it now. We'll go to a frame where it's pretty visible. This might have a lot of motion blur in it, but we'll just add the Saber plugin, drag it over here. The glow color is over here, so we could change this to a nice bright red. One thing I forgot to mention is there is a lot of different presets that the people from Video Copilot have set up for you. So there's ones like fire, where it will distort the glow and the core of the blade. So if we go to customize core layer masks now and set this to add, if we set this to mask, no, we don't want to mask the core. We set the render settings from black to add. That'll fill in that. You can see you basically now have a fire blade, which is really cool. And there's a lot of other ones that look really good. I believe there's one that kind of looks like the beam from Starkiller Base, which is probably why it's named Starkiller. But that could maybe be kind of like a Kylo Ren lightsaber. But yeah, there's just a lot of presets in here that are really good. But if we go back to default, we can just change this back to a nice red. And maybe we'll go back to the blue lightsaber over here, because as you can see here, it's a very small amount purple, kind of. And I personally like my blue lightsabers more toward the teal range. It's not changing yet. Okay, that's a bit too green. So change it more to like a teal color. That looks okay. We'll probably do it a little bit more toward the blue. Yeah, that's a bit better. But of course, you can change the lightsaber to any color you want. I just like mine a bit more teal than blue. So we've done all this. We're going to turn off the motion blur. So you can see it doesn't affect it. So I don't really know how to enable it. Like I said, I'm assuming it's with just the core that you can animate. But okay, we'll pull in this layer here, and then we'll add a fast box blur. Set this to about 0.2. Set this to 10. And we will repeat the edge pixels. Turn it off and on, and you can see it is working to cut away those harsh edges. And then we'll go over here, type in force motion blur, drag that on, change it to something like 50, turn the samples up to something like 13. There you go. Now you have your lightsaber glow. So if we go to a frame where both of the lightsabers are in the shot, probably somewhere farther here. Let me find one real quick. something like that. We'll turn them both on. There would probably be a clash here, and as you can see, they look pretty good. Oh, we forgot to tweak the settings on here, so I'll change this to something like 60. Generally, I've found that the red lightsabers, they need more turning down of some settings because they just appear so bright compared to the blue one. As you can see, I pretty much have the same glow settings for each of these, and yet this one's a lot brighter. So I'll change this to maybe like 50. That didn't really do anything, but we'll change it to maybe 40. Yeah, that's a bit better. We could change maybe the glow bias to 1 on this. We don't want it to seem like the glow is moving too much with the lightsaber. We want the glow to be pretty spread out, like the lightsaber is affecting the air around it. So maybe we'll change this to something like 0.5 and this to 0.8. Yeah, it all depends on your preference, but it also depends, you know, on what looks good. So maybe we'll change this to 0.5 and 0.8 as well. See how that looks. It's a bit bright, but that's okay. As you can see, though, the lightsabers don't look really colored for the environment that they're in. But we're going to address this in the next episode where we will talk about clashes and color grading. So that pretty much wraps up this tutorial, but one more thing I want to mention before we do. There is a tutorial from a man named Ricardo Elliot that's called Escape from Post Lightsabers, and he explains on how to make a glow without any plugins using a bunch of adjustment layers and stuff like that, and it looks pretty good, if not better than the Saber plugin. So if you want to check that out, the link for that video will be in the description. So like I said, we will address the color grading clashes in the next episode. I've been Oliver, this has been NetSlow Productions, and I will see you in the next one.